When Nothing Else Is Left But Hope, a short story by author Erika M Szabo. The gentle glow of the morning sun filtered through the moth-eaten curtains, dancing across Anna's face and causing her to sneeze. She reached out lazily, pulling the covers up to her chin, savoring the warmth that enveloped her. For a blissful moment, she allowed herself to let go of all worries and simply bask in the comfort of her warm bed. But as the outside world began to creep in, reality nudged at her perfect moment, threatening to shatter it with its demands. Before the war, they lived in a comfortable two-story house in bustling Budapest. Michael, with his strong build, worked as a railroad engineer while Anna, petite yet fierce, was employed as a skilled seamstress. Together they raised two bright and lively children, Sammy, a curious 6-year-old with sandy blonde hair, and Barbara, a sweet 4-year-old with big blue eyes. But then, their idyllic life shattered. Michael was called to serve, and Anna spent her days hiding in the musty basement with their children, never knowing if each passing moment could be their last. The once vibrant city was now a shadow of its former self, fear and uncertainty filling every corner. The grueling months of trying to stay alive took a toll on everyone. Looters quickly emptied the stores, offering food for jewelry and other valuables. The once friendly and helpful neighbors didn't care for others anymore. They fought for every bite. As the sun slowly rose on the desolate streets, Anna ventured out in search of anything edible to feed her starving children. The air was thick with the stench of decay and despair, and she felt a constant pang of fear gnawing at her insides. Suddenly, she noticed her old neighbor across the street, sitting on the steps of his house, shoulders shaking as he sobbed uncontrollably. "They threw me out," he whimpered between gasping breaths. "My son said there's not enough food for us all, and I should just be on the street waiting to be hit by a bomb or jump onto one of the tanks patrolling the streets. I have nowhere to go. Maybe I should just." Hearing his desperate words, Anna's heart ached with empathy. This man had always been kind to them, often surprising her children with small toys that brought joy to their difficult lives. There. She consoled him gently, offering a comforting hug. "We don't have much ourselves, but you can stay with us." While Anna went out in search of sustenance, John kept the children entertained with his animated storytelling. But when she returned with only a small sack of potatoes, exchanged for her last remaining possession, a simple ring, their future became even more uncertain. "I don't have anything left," Anna cried, tears flooding her eyes. "What are we going to do?" John's voice was heavy with concern as he asked, "Have you heard anything from Michael?" Anna shook her head, her eyes downcast. "Not since he left," she replied, her voice trembling. "I'm not even sure he's still alive." Determination flickered across John's face as he made a decision. "I'll go over to my house tonight," he announced with conviction. "I was weak when I let my son throw me out because I thought he was right. I lived a long life, and it was time for me to step out of the way. But you took me in and showed more kindness than my own flesh and blood. I'm going to beg him. If there is some of the gold I gave him still left, you can't be so stone-hearted to refuse to help your children." But his son's heart was made of stone. His words reverberated in John's mind like a sharp slap in the face. "Why are you still alive?" he shouted from behind the closed door, his voice laced with bitterness and resentment. John could feel his heart clenched at the sound, knowing that their once close family had been torn apart. "How could you be so cruel to your own father?" John's voice broke as he cried out in disbelief. His eyes were red and swollen from tears, his chest heaving with emotion. "I raised you and did everything I could for you. All I'm asking now is some of the gold I saved for hard times like this," he begged, his voice cracking with desperation. "That gold is mine. You're old. You lived long enough. I have to feed my wife and kids." His son's voice was cold, unfeeling. "Why can't you just do the right thing?" John's heart ached as he shuffled across the deserted street, his sobs echoing through the empty buildings. He had never imagined that his own son would turn him away in his time of need. "My own son. My flesh and blood," he whispered, tears streaming down his wrinkled cheeks. Anna let the old man in through the back door and tried to console him. "We'll get by somehow," she whispered, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. That night, they huddled close to each other in the dark basement, the air thick with fear and tension. They could hear explosions and gunfire outside, the sounds getting closer with each passing minute. That was very close. Anna cried out in terror, hugging her children tightly to her chest. Mama, I'm scared. Little Barbara screamed in fright as the building above them shook violently. But despite their fear, they held on to each other tightly amidst the chaos of war raging outside. Shoo. Don't be scared, Munchkin, I'm here. We'll be all right. Anna cooed, choking back her tears. The bombing stopped around midnight, and the children fell into a restless sleep. Sammy trashed and whimpered in his sleep, and Barbara clung to her mother. Jean crept to the small, cloudy basement window at the first sign of dawn and looked out. Anna, he cried out. My house. What is it, Jean? Anna asked, frightened. It's gone. My house. The bomb that hit close last night. The old man wept. The streets were quiet when John went looking for his son and his family. He couldn't find any sign of life, only rubble strewn around and a deep crater where the bomb hit the house. He searched for a long time, falling over broken bricks and calling their names to no avail. They're all dead, he sobbed when giving up. He returned to Anna and her children. The house he wanted so badly killed him. Just when all hope seemed lost, Anna's heart skipped a beat at the sound of a weak voice coming from the street and saw a crouched figure desperately trying to look inside. Anna. They heard a man's voice. Dear God, let them be alive. Michael. Anna jumped up and ran to the window. Michael, is that you? Yes, thank you, Lord. The children? We're all fine, Anna sobbed, her heart bursting with joy. I'll open the back door, she shouted and ran up the stairs. As she hugged her husband tightly, Anna's breath caught in her throat when she noticed Michael's missing left arm. His uniform sleeve hung empty, a painful reminder of the horrors of war. But in that moment of reunion and gratitude for their survival, it didn't matter. They were alive, and they were together, and that was all that truly mattered. We were under attack, and the medic couldn't get there on time. He couldn't save my arm. He had to cut it off, and they discharged me, Michael whispered. It doesn't matter. Anna cried out, smiling at him through tears. You're alive and you're here. Come, the children will be so happy to see you. After they filled their stomachs with the food Michael had in his bag, they discussed the possibilities. The war is not going to end soon, Michael said. We have to leave the city. At those words, John's shoulders slumped and sobs racked his body. But deep down, he knew Michael was right. His family needed a place where they could truly be safe. A place where they wouldn't have to constantly fear for their lives. Jean bowed his head and broke out in tears. You're right, Michael. Your family needs a safe place. You're coming with us. Anna's voice wavered, but her determination was clear. We're now your family. Jean bowed his head and broke out in tears. You're right, Michael. Your family needs a safe place. You're coming with us. Anna's voice wavered, but her determination was clear. We're now your family. With their meager belongings carefully packed into a hand-pulled wagon, they set out on their journey away from the city. The nights offered a brief respite as they traveled quietly on foot with their children nestled atop the wagon, exhausted and believing this was all just a bad dream. But as dawn broke each day, reality set in once again. The path ahead was treacherous. Rocky terrain and winding roads leading them through thick forests and abandoned towns. They sought shelter wherever they could find it, under fallen tree branches or in dilapidated buildings, always on guard for any danger that may lurk nearby. As they journeyed, they faced desperation at every turn. Food was scarce, and stores were closed, leaving them to scavenge what little sustenance they could find in the countryside. Each day brought new challenges and dangers, but they persevered with hopeful hearts set on finding a safe place for their family. The weight of uncertainty hung heavily in the air, but they held on to each other tightly, knowing that as long as they had each other, they could face whatever came their way. Tucked away in the remote northeast corner of the country, they finally arrived at the small mountainous village where Michael had spent his childhood. As they made their way through the quaint streets, curious faces peered out from behind curtains and doorways, watching their arrival with suspicion. When they came to a stop at the weathered gates of Michael's family home, 6 burly men charged toward them wielding pitchforks and axes. What business do you have here? The man who appeared to be their leader barked, his stance defensive. We don't need no strangers here. Move on. But Michael recognized his old classmate from school. We're not strangers, Paul, he called out. It's me, Michael Varga. We were buddies back in elementary school. This is my parents' house. There was a brief exchange of hushed whispers among the group of men before their leaders spoke again. We don't want you here, city boy. Especially now that you're a cripple. He spat out the words with contempt. You abandoned your hometown, so stay out. We have enough mouths to feed as it is. What are we going to do? Anna whispered, holding on to Michael's arm. We can't fight them. They're going to hurt us. They're hostile, he whispered back. My parents had a haunting lodge up in the mountain. We'll find it. The small family was watched closely as they started moving, their steps heavy and hesitant. Michael took the lead, pulling the wagon with determination, while Anna and John pushed from behind with all their strength. Sammy and Barbara huddled together, whimpering softly as they clung to each other in fear, refusing to look at the group of men tracking their every move. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, casting an orange glow over the rugged landscape, they finally reached their destination, a decaying building with peeling paint and broken windows. The once vibrant garden that had been Michael's mother's pride and joy was now a tangle of overgrown weeds, a stark reminder of the passing of his beloved parents 15 years ago. The air was thick with a sense of sadness and loss as they gazed upon the empty shell of what was once a thriving homestead. They entered the small house in gratitude for the roof over their heads. The walls were weathered and cracked, with patches of peeling paint revealing the faded wood underneath. Outside, wild plants twisted and tangled around each other, a stark contrast to the once neatly cultivated garden. Despite the wild overgrowth of vegetation surrounding the house, they still managed to find fruits, corn, and some vegetables that reseed themselves year after year. People in the village have probably forgotten about this place, Anna pondered, her voice laced with unease. Otherwise, they would have taken everything. Michael's face grew serious as he replied, Yes, more than likely. He gently stroked his wife's back. And let's keep it that way. This house is far enough from the village. They don't need to know we're here until we can learn more about the people who still live there. There are bad people everywhere, and I can't protect you all with only one arm. Tears welled up in his eyes as he thought of the danger they were in, but he quickly wiped them away and put on a brave face. Anna wrapped her arms tightly around her husband, children, and the old man she learned to respect and love, tears streaming down her face. We'll get by, she sobbed, holding on to her family. Despite the harsh winter ahead, they persevered and were able to carefully pack away enough food to sustain them through the long months. Michael found the root cellar stocked with jars of pickled vegetables, bags of dried beans and lentils, and even some canned meats that Michael's mother had wisely stowed away for emergencies. They also found hidden treasures in the basement, bags of salt, sugar, and various spices that would add flavor to their otherwise plain meals. The children took part in the hard work and gathered wild berries in the woods with John. One day, they stumbled upon two scrawny hens and excitedly carried them home as if they were prized possessions. Mommy, Mommy! Sammy burst into the kitchen, his face beaming with pride. Look what we found. Oh, perhaps they ran away from the village, Anna wondered. Or maybe they're the grand chickens of my mom's hen that escaped from the butcher knife when I was a kid. Michael laughed. Barbara eagerly chimed in. Can we cook chicken soup? But Anna's frown quickly put a halt to the little girl's plans. I think we better keep those hens, she said thoughtfully. They will lay eggs, and maybe I can use some corn flour to bake a cake for Christmas. The mere thought of having something special to celebrate lifted everyone's spirits and made all their hard work worth it. Anna opened her eyes and gazed at her husband lovingly. His chest was rising and falling in a steady rhythm as he lightly snored beside her. She smiled softly, thinking of all the struggles they had faced together. The rundown house with its leaking roof, the constant struggle to put enough food on the table for their growing children. But none of it could overpower the love she felt for her family. She knew they would get through this, as they always had before. With a sigh, she pushed aside the warm blanket, rose from the bed, and shivered when her bare feet touched the cold floor. Reaching for her clothes, she quickly dressed, preparing herself for whatever challenges lay ahead. In the quiet of the kitchen, she took a moment to savor the peacefulness that surrounded her before beginning another day of hard work with unwavering determination. As tears welled up in her eyes, she couldn't help but think of her young children and husband, out in the forest every day collecting fallen branches in the snow to keep their home warm. The fire was soon crackling in the wood stove, and Anna wasted no time in getting started on their usual breakfast, creamy grits. The smell of cooking corn filled the air as she stirred the pot with practiced hands. Despite the hardships they faced, she found solace in these small moments and felt grateful for the simple joys in life. Suddenly, her heart started beating faster when she heard footsteps and stumping feet by the door. "It's me." She sighed in relief when she heard John's voice. "I didn't hear you going out," Anna said, watching the old man as he dragged a small pine tree through the door. "If my calculation is correct, today is Christmas Eve." John smiled, his eyes misting over. "Oh, John." Anna hugged the old man. John cleared his throat and wiped his eyes. "The war destroyed my family, but I still don't know why. Fate let me survive. Let's make the best of the time I have left. The children need a Christmas tree to restore some normalcy in their lives." As the sun rose over the frosty forest, Sammy and Barbara eagerly put on their hats and gloves to venture out into the winter wonderland surrounding their home. They strode through the fresh snow, their breaths creating puffs of white in the crisp air, collecting pine cones along the way. The children's excitement was contagious as they returned home, bringing their treasures with them to decorate the tree. With each pine cone, small apples and cut-out snowflakes from old paper placed carefully on the branches, they sang Christmas carols with joy and enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Anna busied herself in the kitchen, the scent of warm spices and freshly baked rabbit, pumpkin, and potatoes filling the cozy house. Finally, after dinner, the family gathered around to enjoy the long-awaited cake together. Each bite was savored, the sweetness of the treat matched only by the love shared between them. When Christmas morning arrived, the children's eyes widened with delight at the sight of presents waiting for them under the tree. John had spent hours carving intricate animal figurines from softwood, while Michael had crafted snowshoes for them. And Anna, always resourceful, had discovered a bundle of wool yarn hidden away by her mother-in-law long ago and used it to knit cozy scarves and hats for her beloved children. Although fate had thrown many life-altering challenges at them, they never lost hope for peace and a better future.
Erika M Szabo, a prolific and talented author with a fierce intellect and a penchant for exploring uncharted territories, is a woman of many skills and passions. She is known for her diverse range of writings that span historical fantasy, magical realism, cozy mysteries, sweet romance, and children's literature. Her writing, often compared to that of Hemingway, is both evocative and visceral, transporting readers into the depths of her characters' emotions with a few deft strokes of her pen. Born in a small village nestled among the rolling hills of Hungary, Erika grew up with a deep love for literature and storytelling. She devoured books from a young age and soon began creating her own intricate worlds and characters with her words. Her gift for storytelling is evident to all those who know her, and she is encouraged to pursue her passion. As she grew older, Erika's thirst for adventure and new experiences led her to travel the world. She lived in various countries, soaking up their cultures and traditions and incorporating them into her writing. Her travels also allowed her to meet a diverse array of people, whose stories and perspectives she wove into her novels. Despite her literary success and acclaim, Erika remains a humble and down-to-earth person. She often speaks of her belief in the power of words to connect and heal, and her writing reflects this deep empathy and understanding of human experience. After negative experiences with publishers, she started her own company to help authors with book formatting, cover design, and navigating the complexities of publishing. Erika is also the founder of #OurAuthorGang, a group of writers associated with Golden Box Books Publishing. Some of her notable works include Protected by the Falcon, the first book in the Ancestor Secrets series. This historical fantasy novel introduces readers to a world of clan mysteries and ancient traditions. The Unbroken Curse, a historical fantasy that explores an ancient curse cast by a powerful witch 1600 years ago, affecting families across generations. In addition to her novels, Erika has authored several children's books that emphasize moral values, acceptance, and friendship. Titles like Pico the Pesky Parrot and Look, I Can Talk with My Fingers aim to educate and inspire young readers. Erika's multifaceted career reflects her passion for storytelling, art, and supporting fellow authors in bringing their creative visions to life.